Hey everybody, my name is Heron, and I'm the Senior Research Analyst for LGBTQ Justice at Political Research Associates. We're a national nonprofit that investigates and strategizes against the US right to build capacity among allied organizations in pursuit of a multiracial, queer, feminist, liberal democracy. At PRA, I monitor anti-LGBT rhetoric here in the US and abroad with a focus on anti-trans rhetoric and advocacy. I also monitor the spread of religious exemptions. I write about child welfare systems, conversion therapy, polyamory, dystopias, sex work. If you'd like to get in touch, and I encourage you to, my email is h.greensmith, and there's an E after green, at politicalresearch.org. I use they pronouns. Before I begin today, I want to issue a content warning for strong anti-trans and anti-LGBT language for what I'm about to talk about. On Wednesday, February 23rd, this week, but obviously I don't know when you're listening to this, a coalition of the largest, most well-funded anti-LGBT policy and litigation organizations jointly released their promise to America's children. Couched in paternalistic language, this promise details 10 principles to protect children's, quote, health, privacy, and safety, and relationships with those who have the primary responsibility to love, provide for, and educate them. Parents are encouraged to sign this promise, and legislators are encouraged to request model legislation to help implement the 10 principles. A side note, we have requested the model legislation, but haven't received it yet. To be clear, there are bills supporting the exact principles in the promise being considered in legislators across the country already, and spokespeople from organizational supporters of the promise giving expert testimony at the hearings for these bills. And to be even more clear, there is already a coordinated attack on trans youth at the state and federal level in the United States. You can find my work on this at politicalresearch.org. The promise merely brings the players to light and coordinates their efforts. The organizations primarily involved in the launch of the promise include three. First, the Family Policy Alliance, an anti-abortion, anti-LGBT, anti-trans policy and litigation shop closely connected to the anti-LGBT focus on the family. The Family Policy Alliance works with state affiliates across the country to support anti-LGBT and anti-abortion legislation. Second, the Heritage Foundation is a right-wing think tank that leads policy analysis and policy advocacy across the right. Heritage hosts panels and publishes white papers supporting anti-trans, anti-LGBT, anti-abortion, anti-feminist policy. In February of 2021, this month, former Vice President Mike Pence joined Heritage as a distinguished fellow, ensuring Heritage's continued focus on anti-LGBT, anti-abortion policy. And finally, the Alliance Defending Freedom needs no introduction here, but they are the foremost anti-LGBT litigation shop in the country, funded by the largest names in Christian right anti-LGBT philanthropy. ADF are the attorneys suing Connecticut to end its non-discrimination protections for trans students, and suing the city of Philadelphia for an exemption to its non-discrimination protections for LGBT people in places of public accommodation. The broader coalition behind the promise includes many of the usual players on the anti-LGBT right and Christian right, including notably the Eagle Forum, the American College of Pediatricians, Concerned Women for America, the Family Research Council, Family Watch International, and Focus on the Family, along with state policy alliances from across the country. On Wednesday, February 23rd, the coalition formally launched the promise with an online webinar and speakers from all the major partners and endorsers. Rhetoric at the launch focused on protecting children, exposing the Equality Act, which is legislation that will add sexual orientation and gender identity to the bases upon which it is unlawful to discriminate at the federal level. But most of all, the rhetoric at the launch returned again and again to sports, protecting cis girls in sports, preventing trans youth from playing sports, the dangers of sports over and over. I'm not going to go through the principles one by one here. You can do that for yourself if you're inclined, but I am going to lay out exactly whom this model legislation is aimed at. And the answer is, unfortunately, the very children whom it purports to protect: trans children, cis children, student athletes of all gender identities, youth in crisis, youth in the foster care system, youth with LGBT parents, youth who need access to abortion and reproductive health care, and on and on. Straightforwardly, here's what the promise promises if its model legislation is enacted. Comprehensive sexual education will not be taught in schools. Parents will have to opt their children in to any sex ed, as well as any conversations about sexual orientation, gender identity, LGBT history, abortion, and reproductive care. Students will be encouraged to bully and harass their classmates and teachers who are LGBT or who speak about queerness, abortion, or reproductive care. Parents will be encouraged to submit their children to harmful, discredited conversion therapy. States and school districts will be unable to protect students and children from discrimination in education on the bases of sexual orientation and gender identity. This means that trans student athletes will be unable to play sports at school, and that trans students, non-binary students, and gender non-conforming students will be forced to either use the bathroom that doesn't match their gender identity or forced to not use the bathroom at all, resulting in incalculable health risks. And these health risks are well documented after the fight for HB2 in North Carolina. Trans and non-binary youth will be unable to access trans-affirming care. Period. End of sentence. The promise promises that trans-affirming care will be completely inaccessible to youth. Faith-based child welfare organizations will be able to discriminate against LGBT prospective parents, LGBT children in their care, and LGBT-headed families who seek their services in times of crisis. Parents will be able to submit their children to harmful and discredited conversion therapy, as I said, and youth will have no recourse to support themselves. Schools will be forced to out LGBT students to their parents, regardless of safety concerns. The promises are far-reaching and will surely be even broader than I outlined here, as legislators are emboldened by these organizations to introduce bills that permit medical providers to opt out of reproductive care and trans-affirming care, bills that permit faith-based hospitals to not offer reproductive care or trans-affirming care at all, bills that forbid schools and school districts to even mention LGBT people or LGBT history and issues, and bills that affirmatively permit harmful conversion therapy on minors. The promise to America's children is a promise indeed, a promise to queer youth that they will struggle, a promise to LGBT parents that they will find it harder to support their families, a promise to all Americans that our children will be raised to not understand their own bodies, to not love themselves fully, and to fear being their full selves with their family, friends, and teachers. This promise is a promise for a dark future. To read more about my research into this coalition and the promise to America's children, you can visit politicalresearch.org. Follow me on Twitter at Heron G, and please be sure to sign up for our newsletter to get updates on our work about this promise to America's children and more. Thank you so much. Have a great day.